Hey, what's going on? I think that actually worked for our first ever episode. As you can see, we took some time to make some groovy graphics up because why not? That's how we do it. I'm your host, Ben Wu, for the first ever CMA live podcast. And I'll tell you what, this has been a long time coming. You know, podcasting and media for me, for those that know me, has been something that's really been a big part of my life. And speaking of a big part of my life, the topics and the type of content that we're going to be going over here at the CMA Live podcast is something near and dear to me. For those that know, I've been in the car scene for quite some years, dating back to the 90s, and to kind of come back full circle and get right back into it with CanadianMobileAudio.com is certainly been an absolute blast. Reconnecting with friends, reconnecting with people I haven't seen in years, and seeing how well they're doing, and to what extent they've taken their careers within the mobile audio has been absolutely impressive. So that's really, to say the least. I'm not going to take up too much time because we got some incredible guests lined up tonight. But before we get to that, I want to take a quick minute or two just to talk about, what Canadian Mobile Audio is and how we got here. Canadian Mobile Audio, that's exactly what it is in the name. We represent mobile audio electronics industry from a Canadian perspective. What started out about 2.5 years ago, Frank Spezzano, formerly from Passman, a near and dear friend of mine for over 20 years, came with an idea out of necessity to create an event called the CMA Expo that was destined to take place in Toronto just this last April. Of course, as everybody knows, this spring, everything changed. So what did we do? We decided to take a look at what we had built, the network that we had, the brands behind to have such an event, and we decided to reinvent ourselves. And that process brought us to mobileaudio.com. And one of the features, I suppose, from coming out of that website and that new site is this podcast. So I'll be hosting it. We'll be on every 2 weeks. We've got an incredible lineup of guests and topics that we're going to be talking about. Of course, from me, and we hope you enjoy. So don't go away. We got a good hour of solid content, great guests, some laughs, some stories. And without further ado, let's talk about what we're here to do. The very first episode, we're talking about the competition series. Now, back when I was growing up and getting into car audio, all I wanted to do was get to a point where we can compete. I remember going to those sound offs and checking out those demo cars and feeling the deep bass for the first time. And really there's been such a shift in how that all happens. But I'm happy to say today we've got the pioneers. We've got the people that make that machine tick. Today I'm going to talk to them about where car audio competition is and where it's going, because really that's what we care about. We care about the future and where this is going to be. So without further ado, our first guest, we have two guests coming on, and how we're going to break this out is the first part of the show, we're going to bring on our friends from the DB Drag Association, of course, Mr. Wayne Harris himself, the president and founder of DB Drag, along with Ray Choy, who's basically the Canadian director for all things DB Drag, representing FX Audio out of Alberta. Second part of the show, we're going to bring on Travis Chin, who's the international president for IASCA. That's right, IASCA, and along with Mo Sabourin. And for those of you guys who know about car competition, obviously in Canada, Mo Sabourin for IASCA International. And then the best part is we're going to get together and have a powwow. We're going to crash it, we're going to chat, and we're going to find out what the future holds for car audio competitions. So let's bring on our first two guests. We're going to bring them in right here. First, we've got Mr. Ray Choy joining us all the way from Alberta.
Hello, everybody.
And we also have Mr. Wayne Harris, Mr. Presidente himself. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
I tried my best to give you the intro you guys deserve, but of course, if we're going to sit here and talk about anybody's, lustrous career and bio, I think we need an entire different episode just to focus on that. Wayne's bio reads like the what's what of car audio history. And you know what? I promise you, we're definitely going to do that. But I think for today, we're gonna focus in on DB Drag and car audio competition. We have yourself, Wayne, who obviously represents the brand, the competition globally as a whole, and Ray, who's also been traveling with you, the world over as a top level judge. but I'm hoping Ray can help us understand things and maybe shed some light from a Canadian perspective as well, right? Because that's what we're about. So I guess, let's talk about DB Drag. Let's talk about what's DB Drag been up to. Let's not go too far back. Let's rewind the last 5 years leading up to this year. What's DB Drag been doing?
Well, first of all, DB Drag Racing is in more than 40 countries, so it's a true global sound-off organization. And since our inception in 1994, we've done close to 17,000 shows. In the last 5 years, we've been focusing on improving the quality of our officiating, improving the clarity of our rules. We've tried to come up with classes that are more inclusive, that will cater to new competitors, because after all, we want to grow DB Drag Racing and we want to grow the 12-volt aftermarket. So I think we've done a really good job with that, and I'm really proud of the associates that we have that are working with DB Drag Racing. I believe we have some of the best judges in the world. I believe that the people that put on the shows are doing an excellent job, and we have a lot of international representatives that do a good job promoting DB Drag Racing. For the last 2 to 3 years, ever since we introduced the power classes, where we actually clamp the vehicles, we've seen a lot of growth in participation. And I think that the other sound-off organizations have seen the same growth. Coming into this year, we had huge momentum. I was really excited about 2020. We had something planned, something really special planned for 2020. We sold, in the last 2 years, we've sold more DB Drag Racing memberships than ever in history. And for me, that kind of gives me a metric on how well we're doing to grow the organization, because anyone that's willing to pay to be a member take the competition seriously. And then in January, I started hearing rumors out of China. And by the way, Celise, who's my wife and marketing director, and also Ray, we were scheduled to travel to China in February to do a big show in Shenzhen. And I'd started hearing these rumors coming out of China. I'd been watching Johns Hopkins and the spread of this new coronavirus that was unknown at the time. And I guess the rest is history. So, I don't know if you want to talk about the impact of COVID on DB Drag Racing right now, or if you want to come back and talk about it later in the show.
We're definitely going to circle back. I think that's a topic that deserves everybody's input, because it has affected all of us. What I really want to zone in on is, what was the trend leading into these last 5 years? Was DB Drag in particular as a series, as an entity, growing? Was there a resurgence? You're looking at me, and I represent a lot of car audio guys that got into the scene back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where it was hot and heavy, and literally car audio was life. I travel anywhere for the next competition. And then I produced a lot of car shows, right? That's where I met Ray many years ago across Canada. It was always a component, and it kind of trickled off a little bit, and I felt that it was kind of getting somewhere in the last few years. So I wanted maybe Ray to touch on that. Like in Canada, what was the trend? What do you see?
Well, in Canada, it had died off for sure. With the inception of the smartphone and people being attached to them and stuff like that, they were finding different avenues really, they could get together and have a conversation and live vicariously through everybody's cell phones and FaceTime and stuff like that. But after that, though, kind of after they got over the excitement and the hype of, hey, this is new and stuff like that, people started going back to the roots and stuff like that. So over the last 5 years, we've seen a pretty consistent growth in sound off competitions and stuff like that. Even in general, just car shows. One of the big directives that I personally have was what I call the grassroots movement. So inside of any sport, regardless if it's DB Drag Racing or baton twirling or whatever, you need a lot of what I call your entry level guys, or your grassroots people. Out of those, you're going to have a smaller crowd that kind of go up to what I call your 2Xers or your 3Xers, the ones that are willing to travel, the ones that are going to go to multi-point events. And out of that crowd, you can even have a smaller batch that's going to go to your what I call the national level, going to make the trip to finals and stuff like that. So without having a large base to pull from, the pyramid gets smaller and smaller. So over the last few years, what I've been doing is I've been having what I call on the road shows. I've been actively going out and putting on sound off competitions in smaller areas that are further away that may not have seen it before, or maybe they have online, but they've never actually experienced it, never taken part in one. And I mean, the likelihood of somebody in a remote area like that coming and traveling and going to an event, if they've never seen it, heard it, participated in it, like probably 0%, right? So if you can bring the show to them, show it to them and get even one of them interested in doing it, or even having them tell a friend about it, then at least there's some potential to grow, right? So if we kind of kept it small, it would never happen. So we really got to get out there, and the more we do it, the more we'll grow, right? So
help me understand, Ray. Like, what is the structure of the competition from a grassroots level up to, like you were mentioning, bigger events? Are there events in every area within Canada, or is there a large championship at the end of the year? What is the layout of the structure of the competitions?
Okay, so I mean, we did have a multi-point judge out east in Toronto for a couple of years. Chris, I believe was his name is, but he just kind of fell off the face of the earth. Kind of, I don't know whatever happened to him, but there's definitely people want to have shows all across the entire country. I've had people contact me, from New Brunswick and stuff like that. But for the most part, I mean, currently right now, if you're a car audio shop or a car group and you're interested in doing car audio event such as DB drag racing, and you have the equipment, it's absolutely plausible. More than happy to help you out, walk you through everything that you need to do. I have my own kind of set system as far as how I like to run my events, try to make them more efficient and make them fun and enjoyable and stuff like that. So basically, anybody that's interested in doing one event, absolutely. As far as multi-point judges, I mean, over the last few years, we've only had a couple in Canada. It is a lengthy process to become a certified judge. You have to, one, be hosting a bunch of your 1X events. Then you have to have somebody, sponsor you to basically become a multi-point judge by having a multi-point event, and then, learning from somebody, having them watch you afterwards, and so on and so forth. You just have to get a lot of experience in order. If you only did shows in your local area and you only saw the same 30 cars for year after year, you would never gain enough experience to become a multi-point judge because you've only ever seen what's in your backyard. So a large part of that is you have to volunteer some time, or you have to fly in a judge, So when I started, I flew in judges from all over. Like I had Pez come out, I had Cameron Mitchell come out, I had Steve Benton fly out and stuff like that. So I flew all these judges in when I was getting my multi-point certification. And then I had to start volunteering. So I was, I went to Spring Break Nationals. I volunteered at finals and stuff like that. And you really just need that experience in order to become a multi-point judge. If you don't see anything, you're never going to learn, right? So
absolutely. Well, one thing that I can add to this conversation, I'm going to pivot over to Wayne in a second. CMA, what we're here to do is to support the Canadian mobile audio scene. So one thing that we can definitely do, and we started doing it with the events that you've been putting on, Ray, we're going to have a platform to showcase some of the event coverage, get more people, create a little bit more awareness from a social media standpoint as well, and have a place that people can go to and check results and that type of stuff. So we're definitely going to do our part. But I can tell from the comments coming in that, I have Conrad Leduc out here in Sudbury talking about he put on an event last year and it went really well. And there's Vasily as well from Team Def Bounce. And, I think there could be an interest. And if this is the voice or the loud horn, if you will, to kind of wake people up and say, hey, let's get on board. And, these are the guys. I mean, here they are. Wayne Harris, these are the guys that you can contact to make anything happen, especially when it comes to DB Drag. Wayne, what do you have to add to this?
Well, we're always looking for good partners. And I think when I look at all of my friends that I've made over the years, a lot of them started out as business acquaintances. And as we ended up bumping elbows, we became really great friends. It's hard to become a multi-point certified judge because the rigor involved in because of the trust that's required to do international events is serious. For instance, if somebody is in Italy and they're competing in an event and someone in Australia is watching that show or looking at the results from that show, it's important that the people in Australia have confidence that the judge is judging the cars correctly. And that's why we require so much effort to become a judge. It's actually a lot of fun, though, and there's no cost involved other than, for instance, traveling. If you or someone you know wants to become a DB drag racing judge or ultimately become a multi-point certified judge, I would just really recommend that you contact me or contact our organization. You can contact Ray, and we actually have a booklet that teaches people or tells people what they need to do to become a certified judge.
Awesome, very cool. So, car audio competition. I noticed when I go to the DB Drag site, there's several different brands involved. I noticed you have your title brand, obviously DB Drag Association. Why don't you walk us through a little bit about the other offerings that you have under your umbrella?
Well, the DBDRA is comprised of 5 formats of competition, and each one of those formats has multiple classes and caters to a different interest. So, for instance, DB Drag Racing is sort of like Top Fuel drag racing. Cars are competing against one another in a head-to-head format. We do quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. So every competitor goes through the lanes and qualifies, and then we create brackets, and the competitors compete to see who has the loudest car stereo. And the winner of each class is the winner of that event. We also have base race, which is also a head-to-head format, but base race is like bracket racing. It is a contest of skill. So competitors enter a class like the 129.9 dB class. They have to play music. It's an average SPL. And then the person that gets the closest to that perfect score that ends in a 9.9 is the winner. The thing that's great about base race is there's a lot of excitement, and you don't have to have an expensive system to be competitive. So it's all about skill. We also have Top Dog. Top Dog's kind of like king of the hill. When you're in Top Dog competition, you come into the lanes and you defend yourself against challengers. And it's also an average SPL contest, but it's more like a video game. So you get points for things like hole shot, points for being close to a perfect score. And then there's also violations. Another format, and this one is really taking off. It's been around. We've had it for quite some time, but it's finally gaining some traction, and it's called Cyclone. Cyclone is like the old school car stereo contest that you may remember, like in the Rolling Thunder days.
Oh,
so
yeah.
There's SPL element, there's an installation checklist where you get points for that, and then there's also an RTA element. This year we introduced a new class called Demo, and Demo is catering specifically to the demo guys. And right now, of the 30 or 40 shows we've held this year, there's been more competitors in the demo class than in the other classes of Cyclone. And then finally, our last format of competition is called Bagger Beats, and that is our motorcycle competition format.
Awesome. Now, what is Term Lab? Talk to us quickly about Term Lab.
Term Lab is a sound measurement system that's designed. It was originally designed to measure high sound pressure levels without requiring calibration, and it needed to be extremely accurate and produce consistent and repeatable results. So the way the Term Lab system came about, originally in the old days, we were using the old audio control and Linear X systems. Those systems used microphones, traditional microphones. And so, we would have to check the calibration of the microphone before each and every run. And then more than half the time, after a car would go through the lanes, the calibration might be off by as much as 10 dB. And this became a real problem at the 2001 DB Drag Racing World Finals. We had a lot of equipment problems. It was impossible to keep the microphones calibrated. And I thought I was actually going to have a heart attack. It was so stressful. And so it became real apparent to me at the time that we need to find some better way to measure sound than using a microphone. So I went to the lab and I started working on the development of a new project. And that's when I developed what we call sensor technology. And sensor technology doesn't use a traditional microphone. In fact, it uses a manifold pressure sensor, but it's more like a semiconductor than anything, and it's incredibly accurate. And in fact, in 2003, with the introduction of the sensor, that innovation received a Design and Innovation Award from the CES show. So, of course, the term-lapse system has evolved since then. In 2015, we introduced the term-lapse Magnum, and that's an all-digital system. That system, and by the way, the term-lapse system is used by all of the sound-off organizations and most of the competitors.
And that's what I was coming around to. I mean, basically, that is the standard, right? So
that's right.
Very interesting. Ray, I'm going to pivot back to you for a second.
Sure.
I've been out of the game, so educate me on this. Like back in the day, if I want to show up at a sound off, I need to come in pretty heavy hitting. Is that the situation?
Yeah.
Like what do you need? What is the entry level for people to get involved? Because maybe somebody listening, does have a sound system, kind of curious to maybe, show it off or see where they stand.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that, even what Wayne touched on. So in the very beginning, when DB drag racing first started, it was the only format we had under the umbrella was DB drag racing. So it was always, a matter of who had the biggest, loudest stereo system in their category, of course. But I mean, there was always such large, big, heavy hitters. It didn't matter if you had 212s. The guy that was, obviously coming in traveling to shows, he had bigger 12s and he had more amplifier power and he was always louder. So you didn't have a very good, chance to win against these guys. Now with, formats such as Bass Race and Top Dog, a lot of it is based on your skill set, how well you can control your sound system. Like, Wayne had mentioned before, I mean, one of our smaller classes inside of Bass Race is 129.9 decibels. I mean, we have competitive, competitors that come out to our events that have systems as small as like a single 10-inch subwoofer, and they're competitive because I mean average subwoofer can single 10-inch woofer might do 135 decibels, but 129.9 average is easily achieved, and you can do this with 200-watt sound system with a single 10-inch woofer. And even if you want to go smaller inside of Top Dog, I mean you can run a system as small as 119.9 decibels. And just for fun, we've tested a whole bunch of stock sound systems, so like the Dodge with the factory sub and the GMCs and the Fords with the trucks. This is Alberta's truck country, but we tested a bunch of those, and they all do about 125 decibels. So you could in theory compete in that category with a stock sound system just for fun.
Interesting.
It doesn't need to be big. That's why I said like we really just need to encourage a lot of people to come out and have fun. And you're right, there is this kind of I'm not sure if it's stigma or just we've been painted with the paintbrush that you really need a big sound system in order to be competitive, and truly you do not. A small system, come in the lanes, have a lot of fun, build some family, as I like to call it. One of the things that I say in my speech, especially when we travel internationally, is that these shows happen, the bigger events, for example, only happen, once a year or twice a year. So, it's like a family reunion, because a lot of people that you see there, you've seen them, but you only see them once or twice a year, right? So
no, the camaraderie element is absolutely great. Now, on that topic, you're a retailer as well. You're a dealer. So two questions. This is a two-part question. I'm going to bring this up on the screen. This is a schedule, right?
Yeah.
So you can see that. Talk us through. I mean, this is a pretty extensive schedule, and this is for the rest of the summer. How does this help as from a dealer standpoint? Does this help with sales? Is this a great tool for you?
Well, so absolutely. I mean, so I typically take, do all my sound off events as advertising. Okay. So my goal at any of my particular events is what I call revenue neutral. If I didn't make any money, that's absolutely amazing. I've had a great time. I've, had a bunch of people come out and stuff like that, but I've introduced it and I've had a lot of fun and I've showed it to people. We've had, 30 or 40 or 50 spectators come through. What we're looking for is what I call industry growth. So it doesn't matter if it's USAC, IASCA, DB Drag, if it's just the kids on the corner at the parking lot, hey, my stereo is louder than yours. We want that type of growth all the way across the board. So when there's, as in general, if car audio is doing good, we're definitely going to see some growth in sound off competitions, whether they be IASCA or DB Drag Racing or whatever the case might be. But that's what we really need to do, is we need to have events, a playground for people to come play. Otherwise, they have nowhere to go, right? So. That's why we're doing as many shows as we're doing. So.
And that's important. We're talking about it because most of our audience, actually, for Canadian Mobile Audio, anyways, are dealers, are people in the industry, whether they're manufacturers, distributors, or the actual dealer themselves, right? So it's important to hear this because, I think, you mentioned the key word, grassroots. I mean, grassroots is where it all begins. So, and we're definitely going to circle back to this. Another question for you, when it comes to car audio competition, what are we doing to get the message out? Like, what are the mediums by which we're promoting the events?
So, I mean, I've gone to some really old school stuff. I've actually started printing posters and flyers and putting them up.
Yeah, that's guerrilla though, right? It's guerrilla.
And you know what? Some people have actually, hung on to some of these posters and or flyers because, look, we'll have a graphic on there, like an old competitor or a picture from, one of the last events and stuff like that. And people hang on to that as a keepsake and put it up in their garage and stuff like that. So that's their constant reminder of, the fact that, there are events out there, there stuff's going on. But in general, for the most part, it's Instagram, Facebook seems to be the one that has the greatest reach and stuff like that. It seems like we're all interlinked with our, via the web, some way or somehow, right? So whether it be Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever the case may be, but that seems to be the best way to get the word out, because sure, you might only have 100 friends, but each of those 100 friends that you have, if they only have 10 friends, we're talking 1,000 people that it's reaching, right? And if those 1,000, and then if those people only have 2, we're talking like 2,000 people that you're reaching, right? So it's just really, so 2 things I think is key. 1, to get your show dates out as soon as possible. 2, I like to do that, like you showed an entire chart, which is great for everybody because then people can pre-plan, right? Like if I would say, if you start with the end in mind, all the decisions that you make from here to there help you, either put you towards it or against it. So if you know that you're going to make, the show in September, for example, and this weekend it's, well, I could go drinking with my buddies, or I can put $100 towards my travel for XYZ event, and you want to go there, then maybe you'll choose to go out, but you won't have 10 drinks. You'll have like 5 drinks. So anyway, so it's really key to have this stuff. And if you don't, show people, or at least tell them, what's available out there, then they're never going to plan for it, right?
Absolutely. So Wayne, I'll give you the floor here just to close up before we bring our next guest up. And of course, like I said, at the end, we'll circle back and get everybody on board. Any closing words about DB Drag?
Well, I think one of the most important parts of our contest is a socialization. We talk about competition and we have leaderboards that track winners and losers and everything else. But if you talk to competitors, for them, it's as important to hang out with their friends and hang out with other people that have a common interest as it is to compete. I see a lot of people talking about saying, I've made lifelong friends at DB drag racing events. We have people that get engaged to get married at DB drag racing events. We've even had people get married at DB drag racing events. So the contest, it's not just about the competition. It's also about the relationships and the lifestyle. And, it's hard to quantify how important that is. I tend to think of DB drag racing like the song Hotel California. You can check in, but you can't check out. So anyway, I appreciate you having us on here, and, thanks a lot.
Okay, great. Well, you guys stay put. Don't go too far. We're going to bring on to our next guest here. And, our next guest, well, I guess it's the other half of the coin if you really think about it. I myself remember competing at IASCA, and that just the very phrase IASCA, that acronym for me it puts chills. Podcast 2 days ago, I can't tell you, I must have had 12 or 14 guys I haven't spoken with in a while just reach out to me on Facebook and say, "Well, are you kidding me? These guys bringing back all the good times that we had." And these 2 guys are certainly a good time. So without further ado, let's bring them on. First, we're going to get this gentleman here. We're going to say bye to Ray for a second. And we're going to say bye to, there we go. There we go. And there we go. There's Travis. How are you doing, Mr. Travis?
Doing okay.
And we're also going to bring on Mr. Mo Sabourin.
Hey, everybody.
What's going on? Team IASCA in the house.
Yeah.
All right. So how should we do this? Let's do it this way. So we'll go like this. Mr. Travis, we're going to give you a big old fancy title. Look at that. Mr. Presidente IASCA Worldwide. Thank you for joining us tonight on CMA Live.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Where are you coming in from? Where are you broadcasting from?
So I am in Washington State.
Washington State, the beauty of the internet. And Mr. Mo, where are you joining us from?
I am joining you currently from Huntsville, Ontario, Canada.
Huntsville, Ontario. Awesome. So guys, welcome to the show once again. So you heard a little bit about, what DB Drag has been up to. Of course, Wayne and Ray, no strangers to the game. But, IASCA, there's that brand. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about what IASCA has been up to these last few years leading up to the spring?
Okay, well, so I'm now the owner of IASCA. I took over in December, just a few months ago. Luckily, I have Mo to help me out with some of the stuff going on. It's been an interesting start to it. I took it over, which was partially the off season, if you want to say there is one. Started taking on different aspects of it. There's a lot in the admin side. And then we were starting to get into things like judges training. People wanted to become judges. There's certain regions in the US that don't have IASCA shows, so we wanted to spread out. Had our first SQ judges training back at the end of February, and that was the weekend that COVID hit. So everything kind of went on pause for a while, and kind of just been having, maybe small events here and there, and just kind of hanging back, waiting to see what the future holds with COVID.
Absolutely, and we're definitely going to get into that COVID topic. Obviously, it's a topic that we can't, dance around. We're going to get to it as a collective group. Mo, event producer. I mean, we've seen pictures of you on Facebook all over the world, literally. Obviously, I'm sure you haven't been traveling quite as much in the last few months, but just prior to COVID hitting, I mean, what was the state of affairs with you and IASCA?
Prior to Travis's purchase of the organization. Before I continue, I just got to give a shout out to Justin Polk and Tom Myers and say, how's it going, eh? Because it's the only time that I hear A on the broadcast, okay? Here in Canada, we don't use A as often as they think.
They think we do. They think we do.
But we don't. That right now.
Yeah.
But over the last few years with IASCA's kind of gone through a transitional phase where we've kind of almost I wouldn't say segmented away from SPL, but we put more of a focus on SQ. It all became a part of being part of retail and retailers. The whole idea basically is to make sure that a retailer can get some value out of it and hopefully drum up some business from it. That's the most important thing. Because let's face it, without customers coming in the door and without people spending money, then what, there's no industry, there's no competition. So that's been the focus for the most part. The SPL side of things has really transitioned more into, as Wayne had mentioned earlier, into the demo phase. The days when I competed back in the late 90s and early 2000s in SPL with my Civic, it was about one-note wonders. That's what my car was. You get in there, you burp it for 30 seconds, or actually about 4 or 5 seconds. You hit your number, you shut it down. Now it's about musical SPL. IASCA's birth of bass boxing, some goodness, 10 years plus years ago now, has really made a huge difference in the musical aspect of IASCA competition, and it's helped bring some of those young guys in. But there's still, a lot of them don't really want to hear or see a specific number or a number on a screen. They just want to be able to show off the car. So we try and accommodate as best as we can in both areas. But I think bass boxing really is the way that things are going now. I think Travis could probably even add to that a little bit more than I could.
Well, I'm just going to touch on a couple of things you mentioned there, Mo. And I think I'm going to refer back to you real quick. Being Canadian myself, yourself,
yeah,
we had some real champions go really
far
back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
like, has that been, has people carried that flag on in the last 10 years? Like, where are we at as Canadians?
On the SPL side of things, I don't think so. I think it's kind of changed a little bit in that respect. Yeah, I mean, you look at me, I got no hair and whatever's left is gray. Whereas, I mean, I got emails from Shaker Turgeon, probably one of the coolest guys I'd ever meet on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. And we were fierce competitors against each other. We had a rivalry, but we were buddies. At the end of the day, we all went over to the bar and had a drink and had a good time. I don't know if that. I really can't say that happens anymore because I've been removed from the competition side of things.
Right.
As a competitor, as an event producer and travel for the festival. So will Wayne and Ray. You're so focused on getting the job done and getting the show done right for the competitors that you don't really have time to kind of.
Oh, I hear you. It's just
for yourself doing car shows.
For me and a lot of people, in the industry, so many of those competitor names have gone on to become important individuals in the industry.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, whether they're in a distributor level or an engineer level or whatever it is. I mean, here's one thing. Here's one common thread. I think everybody on this panel started as competitors first, right? And I think that's a common thread. We're going to circle back into that because I know Ray competed. I've seen videos of Wayne like way back in the day with trucker hats on, and really, I mean, that's where it all started. But Travis, you bring a unique perspective. Obviously as a competitor, as a judge, now as president. What's your vision? Where do you see this going for IASCA? Where do you want to bring it?
Well, I'm just hoping to get it more, let's just say, expanded back out to areas where they're missing. There definitely was a decline in certain areas. I'm specifically talking about the U.S. and probably parts of Canada. I'd like to bring that back, kind of bring things sort of, I guess you could say, up to date. There were some things that maybe were lacking, like in social media, just things where stuff had advanced quicker than people could keep up with. Mo did a great job of taking care of IASCA and Paul too. But it just seemed like, maybe we needed to get it kind of up to date so that the younger crowd can get back into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two things that are important, and this is kind of the theme. How do we get the younger generation back involved? Obviously there's been an overall, a little bit of a decline of interest in anything automotive related, whether that's racing, whether that's car customization, whether that's, car audio. So that's already one challenge. The other thing is, how do we build it? And what is IASCA's plans to kind of put the event as a tool back into the retailer's hands, like you were mentioning, Mo? Like, well, what do we have in place for that? What is the plan moving forward? Are there any plans to kind of make IASCA more of a tool to help dealers today?
Yeah, so we actually had been trying to do that more in the Northwest here, over on the West Coast, in Washington, with the shows that I've been doing over the past few years. There's a few retailers that I've been working with, became really good friends with them. And we've been trying to use it to draw in more business for them. Also, I've been trying to connect with more manufacturers to get them more involved. I think it kind of takes a little bit of group effort of not just IASCA, but the retailer to both be on board with shows and to both figure out ways to get more spectators in, because then they'll be able to view these car stereos and get interested into it.
Well, I got to give a shout out right now to Todd and Jackie Howie over at Automotive Universe in Red Deer, Alberta. They've been pretty much coordinating IASCA events all summer, as far as Canada's concerned. If we're talking about future events for the rest of the season, what do we want to focus on? I believe there's some IASCA events happening at Visions, if I'm not mistaken, in Regina, in Saskatchewan. That's a big one that's coming up. Are there any major IASCA events planned for Canada this year?
I don't know of any just yet. I need to check in with Todd again. I know he sent me one this morning. Just hadn't had time to check it out.
Yeah, no way. Where would people get info? I know for sure there's one August 22nd, Visions East. That's for sure. What is the general website to get all the information for IASCA?
Right. So if you just go to IASCA.com,
Yep.
and there's an events heading, and you go there, and it lists out all the events that are coming up.
Now, I'm going to... yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Mo. Go ahead.
Oh, that's what I'd like to add, too, that especially now that being back home in Canada, the circumstances have changed where I'm going to have a little bit more time to focus on IASCA once again. And what I'd like to do is offer to those listening, Canadian dealers, Canadian competitors, event promoters who are interested in hosting an IASCA event anywhere across the country, by all means, if you need advice, if you just have questions, if I can be of any help, I can be reached easily, mo@iasca.com. I will have a Canadian phone number sooner or later. So that's $1 million to call me, but yeah.
But you're on Facebook. You're on Facebook. You're accessible, man.
On Facebook, yeah. I'm on there usually at least in the mornings and then late in the evening. So by all means, anybody has any questions, drop me an email, send me a Facebook message. Happy to help.
There you have it, folks. You have both organizations saying, they're available. They want to help out. They want to get you interested. Call these guys, whether it's DB Drag or Asking Together. Very soon we're going to get them all together because we've got some important questions we want to talk about. Mo.
Yeah.
You're back in Canada now. You've been traveling so much. I want the honest truth from you. Where do we stack right now globally as far as level of competitiveness?
Canadian competitors?
Yes, I want to hear it.
Well, it's going back a few years, but Canada's been a little bit soft. We've had a couple of big players in the past, guys like Frankie Valenti, 20 Hertz Audio. Guys, I'm trying to think of the brothers from out west again. There, I'm drawing a blank on their names. Super guys. Steve Takeoff up there, and all great competitors. And from a Canadian perspective to the rest of the world, we're doing okay. But I think that we can offer a lot more, and we can get out there and really shake the trees and show people what Canada's made when it comes to quality car audio and bass systems.
Awesome. Okay. All right. I'm going to pivot that back to you, Travis. Any closing comments you'd like our Canadian listeners to know about when it comes to IASCA and what we should expect moving forward? And now, again, we're going to talk about COVID and all that stuff, but just generally speaking.
Yeah. Our goal is to get more shows going up there. Yeah. And hopefully you guys can make it out to the shows and just come out and have some fun. Absolutely.
And as I had mentioned earlier with Wayne and Ray, we're going to do our part, CMA, CanadianMobileAudio.com, to feature, that event coverage so people have somewhere to go to check out the latest results or see an image of a girl getting her hair blasted or a kid enjoying his first sound off for the first time and all that good stuff. So definitely check that out. All right. I'm going to put these guys away for a second here. So there you have it, folks. We've had both sides of the coin. We've talked to the folks over at DB Drag. We've talked to the folks over at IASCA. This is the part of the show where we kind of put everybody together and answer some important questions, because obviously COVID-19 has affected the scene, it's affected the shows, it's affected businesses as retailers, and there's no way around that. Our goal and our objective is to try to find the avenues and the information that we can put in front of you to make the best decision moving forward, and put as much resources, information, stats, specialists like these guys, and really come up with ideas that could help build your business and help build this scene, this industry together. So everybody back. So we're going to bring Wayne back. We're going to bring Travis back. There's Mo. Oh, look at that. Everybody's there. All right. Perfect. Okay. I have a question. And we're going to start with some questions because, like I said, we had a couple questions emailed over to us prior to the show. This comes from Keith McCumber. Keith McCumber is the owner of Sounds Good Auto in British Columbia. You might know him. He asks, what can I, as in Keith, and other shops in Canada do to help IASCA get to pre-COVID greatness? Of course, we know Keith has a personal history. He obviously was a competitor with IASCA, and he's judged in the past. So, obviously there's that involvement. But I think the spirit of the question is the same. What can shops do to help get car audio competition back to its former glory? And I'll start with Wayne.
Okay, well, I can't speak for IASCA, but I can tell you I have some thoughts on how businesses can use sound-off competition to grow. And I'm really anxious to hear what Ray has to say, because he's the real deal. Today, a lot of internet sales, a lot of products are bought over the internet. And that's something that a lot of retailers are having a challenge with. There's always going to be somebody that sells something cheaper. But when you sell high-performance car audio competition, you can use your install bay to design and fabricate systems that you can't purchase over the internet. So the people that are building the custom installs, it's not about how much they're charging. It's about, do they even have the time to fit you into the schedule? So, I think, our charter at DB Drag Racing is to grow interest in car audio, aftermarket car audio, and car audio competition. I feel that, that any of these formats will stimulate interest in car audio. I think if you go to any high school these days, a lot of kids have never even heard a good sounding system. I mean, really. And I have a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old. And a lot of them, at the local high school have never heard anything better than their earpods and an MP3. And you put them in a vehicle that has the capability of producing high quality, high output. They're just blown away by that. But you can never sell that unless you have some way of demonstrating it. And contests give you the opportunity to do that.
How about you, Travis? What do you have to chime in on?
Yeah, so we've tried some of those shows to get the retailers more involvement. And one of the key things is to make sure that you have competitors that have some of the equipment that you actually have at your stores, and then also have cars that you worked on, and showcase them, open them up, give them demos, do whatever you can to get the customer interested in those products, or having you do the install. Also having your sales reps kind of walking out during the show and just kind of, talking to the competitors and, just getting spectators more involved with the sales rep right there. That's pretty key in the getting business. Otherwise, you just end up with other retailers or other channels that are basically advertising in your parking lot.
And Ray, you're a dealer yourself. What do you have to add to this?
Well, I mean, I think Wayne and Travis covered a lot of it. One of the things that I really notice when we have our events is that, like Travis said, if you have some demo vehicles out there and stuff like that, especially ones that you've done or worked on or helped with and stuff like that, it adds credibility to the shop that's actually hosting the event. We've actually ended up with a lot of really big sound system builds, not for competition, but for a lot of people's personal enjoyment, because we've had a sound off event here and people have driven by, or they're a spectator, they've come and looked and seen or gotten a demo and said, man, that is crazy. I would never want to compete, but I sure would love to have a big system for myself. And I mean, there are so many really good customers that we have that we've built $20, $30, $50,000 sound systems for, that have never come into the staging lines, never competed in any format, but they just really want to do it so that they have a great sounding system for themselves. But without having the event and having shown them that you're definitely capable of doing that, they would have never come here. So yeah, I totally agree. You definitely have to have some demo vehicles out there. You definitely have to have your staff out there. You definitely have to be talking to the spectators that are coming through and stuff like that. And you just have to make put yourself out there. Yeah, we all make mistakes too. So
I noted something here that Travis said, and that was talking about having their sales reps involved during the events. Yep. What is there to be said about maybe incentivizing distributors or getting more distributor support maybe at the events? What do you think about that, Mo?
Well, if I can step back to the initial question first and
sure,
foremost.
Absolutely.
One of the things, Keith, and all other dealers out there, Ray, yourself included, anybody else, any other retailer, Conrad, I saw your note, by the way. The IASCA rules for installation quality set standards for installation. When you use those rules for installation quality on your sales floor, when you're talking to a customer, you can not only show them your demo vehicles and the great job you did building them, but you can show them how you built them. So now they can see the level of craftsmanship and professionalism that goes into the build. So that's one thing I think our industry lacks greatly in is a standardization as far as the quality of work is concerned. There are, and I know there's some very reputable dealers out there. I know there's some not so reputable dealers out there. But the thing is if you use the rules and you use them to that standard and you show customers that's how you build their sound systems, it's what I did in my shop for 6 years, and it worked great. It brought me from $140,000 a year to $500,000 a year in sales just because of the IASCA rule book on my counter. So using the rule book and showing customers how you build your systems, not just what you can build, makes a huge difference. And as far as the question of the reps is concerned, absolutely, without a doubt, the reps need to get involved. And the reps are, those guys know that if they participate in these events and they get there with some deals on product and you have a small sale along with it, there's generated revenue for them, there's generated revenue for you, everybody wins. So, definitely get as many of your reps involved as you can.
So, topic of reps, we actually have somebody from a distribution company in Canada from Importel, Ramesh, and he wants to know what is the average cost for a dealer to do their first event, including all types of the judging materials and all that stuff. What is the general cost to get started to do an event for a dealer?
You're asking me.
I'll start with you, and then I can go to Rick. Yeah.
It's mainly time. The initial investment, as far as the sanctioning fee, the awards, whatever you choose to give out, can be anywhere from about $500 to $1,000 at the absolute maximum for a good single point event. And basically, it's just your time. That's the investment.
Is that a similar situation with DB Drag, Ray?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's countless hours, before the event, during the event, and after the event. As far as stuff that needs to get done from if you're either sourcing awards or building your own awards or doing custom awards or just layouts or helping competitors get their vehicles ready and stuff like that. There certainly is a lot of time involved in it, but yeah, typically $500 to $1,000 is more than sufficient for a 1X event. That gives you a lot of flexibility to be able to give away some good awards and anything else that you want to do with the event, whether it be a T-shirt contest. I think we just had an event at Jackie and Todd's, and they did a frozen T-shirt thing where they froze these T-shirts in water, and you had to break them up and try to put it on in order to win the prize and stuff like that. But it just gives you some flexibility in dollars to be able to do some fun stuff. So
I've seen some fun stuff come through. I've seen a competition where people hold big subwoofers, and the last one standing holding them wins a prize. I've seen amplifiers being shot putted in the air. All kinds of cool stuff, and I think that's important. I'm an event producer by trade, and sometimes you got to think out of the box. And whatever it's whatever it takes. That's the answer. Next question. I just noticed my camera went off. Just give me a second here.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah,
the world that we live in.
It's a world we live in. Okay, great question coming in from somebody you might know, Tim Bailey.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Tim.
Canadian Car Audio, former IASCA champion, blah, blah. It reads like crazy, but he's got a great question for everybody. Well, actually, I guess it's more IASCA specific. He's like, I think I would just be wondering what it might take to get IASCA SQ back to what it was in the 90s or decently close to it, given the quality of the gear that's on the market now compared to when he used to compete. We had to manually adjust for every vehicle acoustic issues, where now it's all DSP. Shouldn't it be easier to get people into the lanes, especially with install not being a requirement anymore?
Travis?
Well, that comes up a lot. How do we get it back to the 90s? Which, I guess 90s music was pretty good. But No, it's you would think it would be easier to set up these tunes, but I think it's more of just the way that the world has changed. The culture has changed. It's not so much everybody wanting to drive. We've already lost a lot of the younger crowd just because they Uber everywhere. So you kind of lost these drivers. I think part of it is also just not having as much exposure because we just don't have shows everywhere.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I've got old newsletters where it's like the smallest font possible, but it's event listing and it takes up 2 pages. And it just shows everywhere, every weekend. Now we just don't have them. So part of it is trying to get those shows back, which is one of the things that we're trying to do.
Okay, well, here's another great question. I'm going to go to Wayne for this one, Wayne. George Dimitriadis wants to know.
George.
Yes, George. Considering the wisdom and decades of experience of this senior panel we have, what is one thing you can name that you miss most from days past? Wayne, starting with you.
Boy, that's a tough question. I would say, it depends if you're looking at it from a business perspective or a personal perspective. From a business perspective, I miss all of the industry support and the publications, the printed publications that we had in the 90s. I think that both of those things helped to grow the Sound Off community. After 9/11, there was definitely a major downturn. And for the last few years, the last 4 or 5 years, we've been seeing a resurgence in interest in competition. So from a business perspective, that's what I miss. I don't have any regrets about anything that I've done. And I can't think, when I think about all of the great friends that I've made and all of the good times that we've had and continue to have, everything from my perspective looks really positive. And so I'm looking more forward than backwards.
That is a great answer. And I'm going to go to Travis to pick one thing that you maybe missed from the past.
Boy, yeah, I guess it's just the amount of shows. I started competing back in '94, and there were just shows everywhere. Now it's just kind of a little bit harder to get more shows going, but hopefully we'll bring those back.
Well, this is a great segue to something I want to talk about. A couple of years ago, something that for me I feel is very pivotal, and I believe many people who are be following would agree. You guys got together and did one grand finale event. Instead of having separate events, you guys all got together. In fact, one of the years, all 4 of the organizations got together, according to Celise. And by the way, big shout out to Mrs. Harris, because she's been wonderful in getting us all this information. So I look like I sound like I know what I'm talking about. Thank you very much, ma'am. There was a great collabo finale event. Why don't we talk a little bit about how that came together and what that's all about, Wayne?
We've been collaborating with the other Sound Off organizations for a long time. And I consider like Mo and Travis are my friends. And I also have friends in all the other Sound Off organizations as well. We, I think, a long time ago, discovered that we would be more successful if we all pulled in the same direction. And over the years, DB Drag Racing has done events in conjunction with IASCA, for instance, at Spring Break Nationals for many, many years. And in fact, the very first DB Drag Racing event took place at an IASCA finals competition. So, there's some really good history there. I was actually personally part of the original rules committee for NACA before IASCA. But I do not want to date myself, but anyway, long story short, we have a good relationship. I think that what you're talking about is the Car Audio Championship, the big collaborative show that we do each year. The first one that we really did that I would consider to be that caliber event took place, I think, in 2012. And and I don't remember all the specifics. Scalise was showing me some emails. Evidently, we had booked an event. We had booked a facility in Indianapolis, and then she showed me an email where I was asking Mo if he would be a part of it, and also Usaki and Mecca. So, it's hard to say exactly where it started. I know Paul Papadakis, who I hope this gets back to Paul. Paul Papadakis is the owner of Soundcrafters. He was the previous owner of IASCA, I believe, and a huge industry contributor. For decades, he had promoted collaboration in the industry and in the sound off community. So I think it's just the fact that there's a lot of trust between the principals in these organizations. We have great personal and professional working relationships, and we've had good success working together in the past. I mean, if you think about that event, it makes sense from every angle. It saves competitors money. It saves exhibitors money. It is more cost effective for the participating organizations. So it just made a lot of sense, and we've been real successful with it, and I'm sure we're going to continue doing those shows in the future.
All right, so I know that you've always had the North American finals. They were in Louisville, right, in Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken?
Well, we've had events all over. Originally we were doing the shows in Nashville, Tennessee, and we've also done them in Louisville and Indianapolis and Huntsville, and I mean, there's been a bunch of different locations.
It must be challenging as far as choosing locations, but I think what I want to know is, what has been the key? If you have to nail it down to one thing, what has been the key to such growth globally? Because really, you're moving all over the place. And then I want to kind of segue to global growth, because I've been, online, you're very present globally as well. So what has been the key to DB Drag's growth in that segment internationally?
Well, I think that we have great partners. As I said earlier, our international representatives are fantastic. We also have great judges, and I've seen a few of them here in the chat. So I want to just give a shout out to those guys. But I have people like Ray. I mean, really, it comes down to they share a common vision, and they want to grow participation in car audio and car audio competition, and they do a good job in their areas. I think also having all of the information on a central website, on the TurnPro website, with the leaderboard and the competitor stats, where people can go online and see how they stack up against others, that has been a big part of it. There's no magic wand, and the goals change all the time. I mean, before Facebook, it was one thing. Now that Facebook's here, it's another, and Instagram and everything else all affect this. Travis was hitting, and Mo, they were hitting on how kids are spending less and less time driving and more time playing Xbox and spending on their phone. So we just need to adapt. We need to try to find the things that are working and keep doing those things. And then if something's not working, we need to seriously consider doing away with it.
You're talking about challenges and adapting to the environment. I don't think the industry or anybody was ready for COVID-19. And obviously adapting is something that we all had to do to survive in so many different respects. I'm going to start with Travis here. What is the strategy for IASCA dealing and moving forward with COVID-19 in place right now?
Well, I think mostly, I've been trying to follow all of the media and, just keeping up, because it seems like, at least down here in the US, every region seems to be dealing with it a little differently. And so, so part of it is just trying to keep up with where can we still have events, when can we start events in certain regions, where do we need to stop doing events. It's really been interesting because, we all thought we would be past COVID-19 by now, and it doesn't seem like it's heading that direction. So part of it is just, everything sort of went on pause back in the spring, and it's still kind of there, I think. It's just so, I don't even know how to put it. It's just so unpredictable to actually know when things can improve and when things can go back to normal, if it ever will get back to normal.
From a dealer standpoint, obviously, depending on where you live, right, and where you're located, like you said, rules are different. I know in Canada, we've been doing pretty well. I think we're pretty blessed as Canadians to say that we've dealt with it, pretty well. We wish the best for our neighbors down south, of course. But Ray, what kind of measures have you, put in place, or what have you had to deal with to still move forward and still get people to come out while, keeping things safe for everybody?
We just follow the health guidelines that Alberta Health put forward and stuff like that. So all of our events are done outdoors to try to minimize. Obviously indoors is a lot more risky than having them outdoors. So we definitely have all of our shows outdoors. We hand sanitize. We have masks available. We have gloves available. But it just seems like the vast majority of people that come to these events, they feel comfortable as long as you're exercising, you're social distancing, and you're not like everybody's not, I guess, shoving their tongues down each other's throats and spreading it around, right? As long as you're like...
Is that what happens out at Alberta Sound House?
No, that's just what we talk about. That's the extreme.
Okay.
We definitely don't want any of that type of stuff to happen, right?
Yeah.
But overall, the vast majority of people, we're blessed in our area that, our rates are so low. I think currently right now we have maybe like 200 active cases in our area, and we have 1.4 million people in our area. So we're talking the number of affected people and number of active cases is like less than like 0.0000001%. So we're talking 1 in every 100,000 people, are active, right? So, and just the sheer number of people that we typically could run into in a day would definitely make the possibility of spreading it very low. So we're fortunate in that event, in that effect, right?
And you I think you mentioned something very important. These events are held outdoors, right?
Yes.
So that kind of helps the cause for sure. Mo, do you have anything to add as far as could this be an opportunity for dealers to actually jump on that sound off situation and make it a reason for people to come out? Because really options are kind of limited right now.
Well, it goes back a little bit to what we were talking about a bit earlier about what we missed and what from the past to today. I think one of the things I missed the most since the advent of social media is the sense of community you used to have at an event. You look forward to going to a show and meeting all your friends from all across the country, all across the continent. I think that's where it basically has to start. I'm probably the least, what's the word I'm looking for? Least qualified to answer a question about events and COVID-19 because I've been out of the competition scene, unfortunately, for some time now. And having just moved back and having to self-quarantine for 14 days and then another 14 days because I had to go to Buffalo.
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck in a house and I can't move. But in all honesty, I think if social distancing is practiced, masks are worn, having these events is the best way to get community back and get people talking about it again.
Very good, very good. And I'll leave the last word on this topic to Wayne. COVID-19, DB drag, moving forward.
Well, DB drag racing is in so many countries, and the situation in every country is different. But I would say this, on any given year, DB drag racing does between 600 and 1,000 events. This year, I think we've done like 30 or 40. So,
Wow.
The number of events that we have actually been able to produce this year is down around 95%. And that is outside of our control. Most countries are completely locked down. And whether it's Italy or Germany or Australia, New Zealand, the United States, of course, there are only a few places in the U.S. that have allowed events to take place. With that being said, I believe that as an organization, we also have a civic responsibility to do our part to help this pandemic come to an end. And having large gatherings of people has been scientifically shown to spread the virus. So I'm torn. I'm torn because one side of me, the scientist side of me, says that we need to not do shows. The other side is that, the people that are participating in the events are usually less affected by the disease. And the pictures that I've seen of the shows taking place, nobody's wearing a mask. at all. Zero. You can't even find any. The only people wearing masks are the judges. So it's hard to know what's going to happen. So this is what our goal is. We extended our season we basically combined 2020 and 2021. So we have an extended season. We're working on programs right now to maintain interest in car audio so that we don't have any attrition. We don't want to lose even one competitor. So Lisa's been working on a program. You can think of it like a frequent flyer program. So instead of doing points championships where people are awarded the champion, become the champion for participating in the most events, we're going to set levels so that once people achieve a certain level, they'll get some swag. Once they get to the next level, they'll get some swag. And we're just going to continue to monitor things. I think that, like Travis said, we're kind of in a holding pattern, and a lot of this is outside our control. I'm really hoping that we have a vaccine soon, and that that we can get people treated so everybody can get back to normal. One thing I will say, and I'm sorry to ramble on so long about this, COVID has been one of the best things for 12 volts in the United States ever. The government injected trillions of dollars. They sent every citizen in the country a $1,200 check. And what did those people that got those checks do? They went out and bought new amps, new subs, new term labs. You can't find any car audio products in the country right now because everybody's out of stock. So 12 volt, I wish Chris Cook was on here because he tracks this stuff meticulously, but I can tell it's been great for 12 volt for sure. And those people are ready to compete. They just are waiting for the opportunity to get out and do it.
Well, you know what? And this sounds like we hopefully will be able to circle back and see the status and progress, once this COVID thing passes us, because it looks like based on the sales, there could be an insurgence. And that's what we're talking about. One last question coming in from Chris Fletcher. Will there ever be a Canadian finals like it was 2 years ago in the future collaborative?
Is that regarding DB Drag or?
I think he's talking both. Well, a big. I guess what they're looking for. I guess what he's asking is, will there ever be a big, showdown, car audio stereo showdown?
Let's put it this way here, Ben. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And
anything's
there
possible.
have been discussions.
All right. Sounds good.
Let's leave it at that for now.
I'll tell you what, gentlemen, we have run our course. I think we did great on time, hour and 15 minutes. You know what? That's the kind of the template we want to go moving forward to keep it nice and tight. And hopefully the folks at home who joined in, thank you for joining us. I want to take a moment to, of course, thank all my awesome guests today for our first ever episode. We had a lot of viewers. I'm sure there's going to be more as the days go by. Gentlemen, I want to thank you on behalf of the industry, on behalf of everybody here at Canadian Mobile Audio. You guys are the reason that keeps the competitive scene not only alive and thriving. We're excited to be partnering up with you by helping as much as we can, help share the information, get the results out there, get the event coverage out there. We're going to do our part for sure, and don't stop being an inspiration for so many of us, because like you said, I mean, many of us do what we do today, and it all started in I'm going to use Ray Choy's terms, our grassroots. And the one thread that keeps everybody together, especially here, is that we all used to compete at one point. Thank you very much, Wayne. Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Mo.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks for having us on.
All right. So
everybody stay safe.
We're going to stay safe. Absolutely. Guys, that's it. That's our very first episode right here on CMA Live. I'm your host, Ben Wu, and we had a heck of a panel tonight. I hope you guys got a lot out of that. For me, it was just inspiring, being in the same room, virtual room as those gentlemen. What they do is important. They're going through a really tough time. COVID-19, of course, has affected all of us. But as you heard Wayne Harris say, sales are going well, and we hope that's happening right at home at your retail location, wherever you may be located. Moving forward, we've got some great shows planned. Every 2 weeks, they're going to go down. We're going to have some key players coming in. Make sure to check out CanadianMobileAudio.com for our schedule. If you like what you saw, make sure you like our Facebook page. Make sure you check out our website. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, as well as LinkedIn. So that's it. Thanks. That's it for tonight. I'm your friend, CMA Live. We'll check you out in 2 weeks. Peace.